The silver ship moved through space like a giant crystal floating in the darkness. Inside, Commander Veltar stared at the bright displays with all four of his eyes wide open. His blue skin had turned pale, something that only happened when he was very scared. The readings on his screen showed numbers that made no sense. Something was coming through their space, and it was using more power than an entire star. "Sir, you need to see this," called Science Officer Thesis from across the command room. Her thin fingers danced over the glowing controls like she was playing music, but her voice shook with fear. "These energy signatures are impossible. Nothing should be able to produce this much power without destroying itself." Veltar walked over to her station, his 6 legs making soft clicking sounds on the metal floor. The Zephrians had ruled this part of space for over 300 years. They knew every ship, every station, and every species that lived in their 12-star systems. This was something new, something that did not belong. "Where is it coming from?" he asked, though he already knew the answer would terrify him. "Outer Rim, sir. It's the dead zones we marked as too dangerous to explore." The Outer Rim. Every child in the galaxy knew stories about the Outer Rim. This was where worlds existed that could kill you just by landing on them. It's planets with air that burned your lungs, gravity that crushed your bones, and weather that could destroy entire cities. No intelligent life could possibly come from such places, but something was coming from there now, far away. On a ship called the Intrepid, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge and watched the stars through the large front window. He was a tall man with brown hair and calm eyes. His uniform was dark blue, with silver badges that showed his rank. He had been in space for 20 years, but this mission was special. This was humanity's first trip beyond their own solar system. "Captain, we're picking up some strange readings," said Lieutenant Amy Chen from her seat at the communications station. She was young, maybe 25, with black hair tied back in a neat ponytail. Her fingers moved quickly over her keyboard as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. "What kind of readings?" Morrison asked. He walked over to stand behind her chair, looking at the screen full of numbers and waves that meant nothing to him. "Energy signatures, sir. Lots of them. And they seem to be moving toward us." Amy looked up at him with worried eyes. "Captain, I think we might not be alone out here." Morrison felt his heart beat faster, but he kept his face calm. This was the moment they had all hoped for and feared. First contact with alien life. Earth scientists had spent decades preparing for this, but now that it was happening, he felt like a small child facing something much bigger than himself. "Dr. Harper, to the bridge, please," he said into his communicator. Dr. Lisa Harper was in the medical bay when she got the call. She was a woman in her 30s with short red hair and green eyes that missed nothing. As the ship's chief medical officer and xenobiology expert, she had studied every theory about alien life that humans had ever created. But theories were different from reality. She arrived on the bridge in less than 2 minutes, still wearing her white medical coat. "What do we have, Captain? Contact?" "Multiple ships, and they seem very interested in us." Lisa looked at the displays and felt her breath catch in her throat. The energy readings showed at least 6 different vessels, each one larger than the Intrepid. They were arranged in what looked like a defensive formation, but they were keeping their distance. "They're scanning us," Amy reported. "Very detailed scans. They're looking at everything from our hull composition to our power output." "Are they hostile?" Morrison asked. "I don't think so, sir. If they wanted to hurt us, they could have done it already. These ships are much more advanced than ours." On the Zephrian command ship, panic was spreading like a disease. The alien vessel had appeared without warning, moving through hyperspace like it was the most normal thing in the universe. But the power readings from their engines suggested technology that should not exist. Commander called Navigator Kethmel from his station. "I'm reading their ship's specifications. You're not going to believe this." Veltar hurried over, his claws clicking nervously on the floor. What he saw on the screen made his blood run cold. The alien ship was powered by controlled nuclear fusion, something his people considered barely possible even in laboratory conditions. But these aliens were using it to fly between stars like it was simple. "That's not the worst part," Kethmel continued, his voice barely above a whisper. Look at their hull construction. Ship was built to withstand impacts that would destroy any Zephrian vessel. Its armor was designed for environments that would kill his entire crew in seconds. The aliens inside were breathing an atmosphere that contained poison gas and living under gravity that would crush most known species. "Sir," Thesis called from across the room. "They're responding to our scans. They're scanning us back." "What are they finding?" "Everything. Our biological makeup, our technology level, our defensive capabilities. But sir, there's something else. They're broadcasting a signal on multiple frequencies, it looks like. Like they're trying to talk to us." Morrison stood in the center of his bridge, surrounded by his crew. The alien ships had been watching them for over an hour now, and the tension was starting to show on everyone's faces. "What do you think they want?" asked Chief Engineer Pete Russell. He was a big man with gray hair and hands that were always dirty from working on machines. He had built half the systems on the ship himself and knew every bolt and wire in the engines. "Same thing we want," Morrison replied. "To figure out who we are and if we're dangerous." "Are we dangerous?" asked Amy with a small smile. Morrison thought about that question. Humans had spent thousands of years fighting wars, surviving disasters, and pushing the boundaries of what was possible. They had built weapons that could destroy their entire planet and then decided never to use them. They had explored the deepest oceans and the highest mountains. They had learned to live in deserts and ice fields and jungles full of creatures that wanted to eat them. "Probably," he said finally. Back on the Zephrian ship, the Leadership Council had gathered for an emergency meeting. The chamber was filled with beings who had lived for centuries, who had seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations. But none of them had ever faced anything like this. "The readings are confirmed," announced Elder Quintal, his ancient voice, carrying the weight of 500 years of experience. "These aliens come from a Class 12 death world." The room fell silent. A Class 12 death world was a planet so hostile that the galaxy's scientists had declared it impossible for intelligent life to evolve there. The gravity alone would kill most species. The atmosphere was filled with toxic gases. The weather included storms that could level cities and temperature changes that happen without warning. "How is it possible?" asked another council member. "It isn't," Quintal replied, "but they're here anyway." Dr. Harper worked with the communications team, trying to understand the alien signals. The mathematics were universal, but there were patterns in the transmissions that seemed strange. The aliens kept repeating certain sequences, almost like they were afraid. "Captain," she said finally, "I think they're scared of us." Morrison looked at her in surprise. "Scared? They have bigger ships, better technology, and there are more of them. Why would they be scared of us? I don't know. But look at these transmission patterns. They're keeping their distance, running constant scans, and their signal strength suggests they're broadcasting to other ships, maybe calling for backup." "Maybe they've never seen humans before," suggested Amy. "Maybe they've never seen anything like humans before," Lisa corrected. She was more right than she knew. In the 3,000 years of recorded galactic history, no species like humanity had ever appeared. The galaxy was populated by beings who had evolved in safe, stable environments. They had learned cooperation and peace through necessity, had advanced technology, but it was designed for safety and efficiency, not survival. Humanity was different. They came from a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years. They had learned to fight back, to adapt, to survive things that would destroy other species. They had built their civilization not through peace, but through constant struggle against their own planet. And now they were in space. Carrying all that strength and stubbornness and refusal to give up with them, the galaxy was about to learn what it meant to meet a species that had never learned to quit. The tension on both ships could be cut with a knife. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Intrepid, watching the alien vessel grow larger on their main screen. It was beautiful in a strange way, like a living thing made of crystal and light. But he could see weapon ports along its sides, and they were all powered up and ready to fire. "Captain, they're sending us something," said Lieutenant Amy Chen, her voice tight with excitement and fear. "It looks like mathematics. basic number sequences, prime numbers, and what might be universal constants. Morrison nodded.
Oh.
This was exactly what Earth's first contact protocols had predicted. Mathematics was the universal language. Any intelligent species would understand numbers, even if they looked nothing like humans and spoke in ways no human could understand. Send back our standard first contact package, he ordered. Let them know we're intelligent and peaceful. But on the alien ship, Navigator Kethmel was reading the human response with growing horror. The aliens had not just answered their mathematical greeting. He had solved complex equations in seconds that would take Zephrian computers hours to work through. Worse than that, they had included information about themselves that made Kethmel's blood run cold. Commander Veltar, he called, his voice shaking. You need to see this immediately. Veltar hurried over to the navigation station, his 4 eyes focusing on the translated data. The aliens called themselves humans. They came from a planet they called Earth. And according to their own data, Earth was a nightmare world that should not be able to support any life at all. The humans lived under gravity, was twice what most galactic species could survive. Their atmosphere contained 21% oxygen, a gas so reactive it would cause fires just from existing. Their planet's surface was covered with water that contained salt, making it poisonous to drink. And somehow, impossibly, they described this hell world as their home. This cannot be accurate, Veltar said, but his voice lacked conviction. The mathematical proofs the humans had sent were perfect. Their technology readings were consistent. These beings really did come from a world that the galaxy classified as uninhabitable. On the Intrepid, Dr. Lisa Harper worked with the linguistics team to establish better communication. She was fascinated by what they were learning about these aliens. The Zephrians, as they called themselves, seemed to be peaceful traders who had never encountered anything like humanity before. Dr. Harper, said communications specialist Ryan Walsh, looking up from his station with a puzzled expression. They're asking us questions about our biology. Very specific questions about how we survive on our home world. What kind of questions? Things. Like what we eat, how much radiation we can absorb, what temperature ranges we can survive in. It's almost like they're trying to figure out if we're really alive. Lisa thought about that. From an alien perspective, humans might seem impossible. Earth was a hostile world by any reasonable standard. Humans had evolved to survive in conditions that would kill most other forms of life. Maybe these aliens had never seen anything like that before. Send them our basic biological data, she decided. Let them know what humans are capable of. It was a decision she would regret. When the human biological data arrived on the Zephrian ship, it caused what could only be described as panic. Science Officer Thesis read the information 3 times before she believed it. Then she ran calculations on her computer to make sure she had not made an error. Finally, she called for medical assistance and sat down heavily in her chair. Commander, she said, when Veltar arrived with the medical team. The humans have sent us data about their biology. I think there has been some kind of translation error, because what they're describing is impossible. Show me. These brought up the human data on her main screen. According to the information, humans could survive in temperatures ranging from -40 degrees to +50 degrees. They could hold their breath underwater for several minutes. They could heal from injuries that would be fatal too. Most species, they could digest foods that would be poisonous to other forms of life. Most terrifying of all, they lived on a planet where they were constantly under attack by their own environment. And they had learned to fight back and win. This says they regularly experience natural disasters that destroy their cities. Veltar read aloud, his voice getting quieter with each word. Earthquakes, floods, hurricanes, volcanic eruptions, and they just rebuild and continue living there. Commander, there's more. They include information about their predators, the animals on their world that hunt them for food. The Zephrians had never experienced predation. Their world was peaceful, with animals that ate plants and lived in harmony. The idea of creatures that hunted other creatures for food was something they understood only in theory. But humans had evolved on a world where everything was trying to eat them. How did they survive? Kethmal asked. They became better predators. Dices answered, and everyone in the room fell silent. Chief Engineer Pete Russell was having his own problems on the human side. The alien ship had sent technical specifications for their communication system, and he was trying to figure out how. It worked. What he found made him scratch his head in confusion. "Captain," he called Morrison over to the engineering station. "These aliens have some pretty advanced technology, but it's all built for safety. I mean, really built for safety. They have backup systems for their backup systems." Morrison looked at the alien ship designs on Pete's screen. Every system had multiple redundancies. Every component was designed to shut down safely if anything went wrong. It was impressive engineering, but it seemed almost fearful. "It's like they're terrified of anything going wrong," Pete continued. "Look at this power system. If there's even a tiny problem, the whole thing shuts down automatically. They'd rather have no power at all than risk a malfunction." They've had bad experiences with technology failing," Morrison suggested. Maybe they've never had to take risks to survive." On the Zephrian ship, the Leadership Council was meeting in emergency session. Elder Quintel presided over the gathering, his ancient face grave with concern. Around the circular chamber, representatives from 6 different species talked in worried whispers. "The humans have responded to our biological inquiry," Quintel announced, and the room fell silent. "What they have told us confirms our worst fears. They are not just from a death world. They are apex predators who have achieved interstellar flight." The implications were staggering. In the entire recorded history of the galaxy, no apex predator species had ever developed advanced technology. Predators were too aggressive, too focused on immediate survival to develop the cooperation and long-term thinking necessary for civilization. But humans had done both. They had remained successful predators and built a technological civilization at the same time. "What do we do?" asked Ambassador Sivan of the Kavari. His insect-like features showed the stress patterns his species displayed when facing mortal danger. "We followed the Deathworld protocols," Quintel replied. The Deathworld protocols had been created over 2,000 years ago, the last time the galaxy had encountered a species from a hostile world. That species had nearly destroyed 3 civilizations before they could be contained. The protocols existed to prevent such a disaster from happening again, but those protocols had been written for species that were victims of their harsh worlds, not masters of them. Dr. Harper made a breakthrough in translation that changed everything. Working with the ship's computer, she'd figured out how to communicate in the aliens' language directly instead of using mathematics. The first message she sent was simple: "We come in peace and friendship." The alien response was immediate and terrifying: "Please maintain distance while we consult the Deathworld protocols." Captain Lisa called Morrison to the communications station. "I think we have a problem." Morrison read the alien message and felt his heart sink. Deathworld protocols sounded ominous. It suggested that these aliens had dealt with species like humans before, and that those encounters had not gone well. "Do you think it means?" he asked. "I think it means they're scared of us, and they have procedures for dealing with species they're scared of." Amy looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm detecting more ships incoming. A lot more ships. There. Surrounding us." Morrison looked at the tactical display. 12 alien vessels had arrived in the last hour, all of them taking positions around the Intrepid. They were not attacking, but they were clearly prepared to do so if necessary. Sir Pete called from his station. "Our scans are showing massive power buildup on those ships. They're charging their weapons." Morrison faced the hardest decision of his career. The alien ships could destroy the Intrepid easily. But if he ordered his ship to power weapons or try to run, it might start a war between humans and the galaxy. "Open a channel to all alien vessels," he ordered. "Channel open, sir." Morrison took a deep breath. The future of human-alien relations might depend on what he said next. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Intrepid. We are explorers, not conquerors. We come seeking knowledge and friendship. We do not wish to harm anyone, and we hope you do not wish to harm us. We are willing to talk, to learn, and to find a way to coexist peacefully." The great council chamber carved from solid asteroid rock had never seen such fear. Representatives from 47 different species filled the curved walls, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of worry that echoed through the ancient halls. Some spoke with voices, others with light patterns, and a few communicated through scent. But they all said the same thing. The Deathworlders had returned. Elder Quintal stood at the center of the chamber, his 500-year-old frame trembling slightly as he accessed the ancient records. The holographic display above his head showed words that had not been spoken aloud for over 2 millennia. The Deathworld protocols, he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the Great Hall, were created after the Ravager crisis of the Second Age. A species from the Outer Rim nearly destroyed 3 civilizations before we could stop them. These protocols exist to prevent such catastrophe from happening again. Ambassador Sivan of the Kavari clicked her mandibles nervously. Her insect-like species had lost an entire colony world to the Ravagers. Elder, what do the protocols require? Containment. First, study second. If the species proves hostile, elimination third. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft humming of life support systems. Elimination was a word the peaceful galactic community rarely used. But sometimes survival required actions that went against everything they believed. On the human ship Intrepid, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his ready room staring at reports he could barely understand. His crew had been working around the clock to decode alien transmissions, and what they were learning painted a terrifying picture. Lieutenant Commander Ben Tucker knocked on the door and entered without waiting for permission. As Morrison's second in command, Tucker had the authority to speak freely. And right now, his face showed the strain of their situation. "Captain, we've got problems," Tucker said, settling into the chair across from Morrison's desk. "Dr. Harper's translation team has been working on the alien databases they shared with us. What we're finding is not good." Morrison looked up from his reports. "How bad?" "Bad enough that I'm recommending we prepare the ship for emergency jump. These aliens have never encountered anything like us, and their history suggests they don't. Handle unknowns very well." Tucker activated his tablet and showed Morrison the translated files. The Galactic Civilization had existed for over 3,000 years, but it was built on principles that humans found strange. Every species in their alliance had evolved on worlds that were safe and stable. They had learned cooperation because they had never faced real threats. Their technology was advanced but designed for safety, not survival. "Look at this." Tucker pointed to a section of text. "They've had exactly one encounter with a species from what they call a death world. It happened 2,000 years ago. The species was called the Ravagers, and they nearly destroyed half the galaxy before the Alliance could stop them." Morrison read the translated account with growing unease. The Ravagers had been a warrior species from a hostile world, much like Earth. They had viewed the peaceful galactic civilization as weak and had attempted to conquer it. The war had lasted 50 years and cost billions of lives before the Ravagers were finally defeated. "The aliens think we're like the Ravagers," Morrison said quietly. "Worse, the Ravagers were just warriors, or predators with advanced technology. From their perspective, we're their worst nightmare come to life." In the medical bay, Dr. Lisa Harper was making her own disturbing discoveries. The alien medical database had been shared as part of the cultural exchange, and what she found there challenged everything she thought she knew about life in the universe. Medical. Technician Sarah Williams looked up from her workstation with confusion written across her face. "Dr. Harper, these alien medical records don't make sense. According to this data, the average lifespan for galactic species is between 800 and 1,200 years. Lisa walked over to Sarah's station and looked at the data herself. The numbers were clear and consistent across all species in the database. These aliens lived 10 times longer than humans, but their medical records showed something else that was even more surprising. "Look at their injury reports," Lisa said, pointing to another section of the database. "In the past century, the entire Zephrian fleet has recorded exactly 12 injuries serious enough to require medical attention. 12 injuries among millions of people over 100 years. Sarah stared at the screen. "That's impossible. Humans have more injuries than That in a single day on Earth? Not impossible, just different. These species evolved in safe environments. They've never had to deal with the kind of dangers that humans face every day. Lisa continued reading through the medical files, and each page made the situation clearer. The galactic species had advanced medical technology, but it was designed to handle age and disease, not trauma. They had no experience with the kind of injuries that humans considered normal. A broken bone would be a major medical emergency to them. A burn from cooking would require immediate hospital treatment. No wonder they're scared of us, Sarah said softly. To them, we must seem like we're made of weapons. Chief Engineer Pete. Russell was having his own revelations in the engine room. The alien technical specifications they had received showed technology that was centuries ahead of human engineering. But it was built with a philosophy that Russell found almost alien. Itself, engineer Danny Clark looked up from the alien schematics with frustration. Pete, I can't figure out how they get anything done. Look at this power system design. There's even a tiny fluctuation in power. The entire system shuts down automatically. Russell studied the alien engineering plans. Every system had multiple backup systems, all designed to prevent any possible malfunction. It was impressive in its complexity, but it was also limiting. They've designed their technology to never fail, Russell said. But that means it can never be pushed beyond its limits either. What do you mean? Human technology is designed to be pushed. We build things expecting them to break sometimes, so we make them repairable. We expect to need more power sometimes. So we build in ways to override safety systems. These aliens have never had to do that. Russell thought about human history. Every major technological advance had come from someone pushing existing technology beyond its intended limits. Humans had learned to take risks with their machines because they had learned to take risks with their lives. Danny, pull up the specifications for our fusion reactor. Clark brought up the human ship's power system on his screen. Compared to the alien designs, it looked crude and dangerous. There were far fewer safety systems, and many of the ones they had could be overridden by the crew if necessary. Now look at the power output, Russell continued. Clark's eyes widened. Pete, our reactor is producing twice as much power as their main engines, and it's a tenth the size. It's because we built it to run hot and fast. They built theirs to run safe and slow. Back in the council chamber, the debate continued. Species representatives argued through translators about what to do with the human ship. Some wanted to destroy it immediately. Others wanted to study it first. A few brave voices suggested trying to communicate and find a peaceful solution. Commander Veltar of the Zephrian fleet stood to address the council. His report from the front lines carried weight that no theoretical discussion could match. Honored representatives, he began, I have been monitoring the human vessel for 18 hours. What I have observed defies our understanding of how intelligent species should behave. The chamber quieted to hear his report. The humans show no fear. Despite being outnumbered 12-1 by ships far superior to their own, they continue their normal routines. They conduct repairs on their vessel that violate basic safety protocols. They consume substances that would be toxic to most of us. And they do all of this while maintaining what they call normal operations. Ambassador This is of the Nessie raised a tentacle to speak. Commander, are you saying they are not aware of the danger they are in? No, Ambassador? They are fully aware. Their communications show they understand our capabilities and their own vulnerabilities. They simply do not allow fear to control their actions. This statement caused a ripple of unease through the chamber. Fear was a rational response to danger, kept species alive by making them avoid threats, species that did not respond appropriately. To fear was unpredictable and therefore dangerous. There is more, Veltar continued. We intercepted their internal communications. The humans are not just unafraid of us. They are curious about us. They want to learn our technology, our culture. Our history, they see this as an opportunity, not a threat. Elder Quintal processed this information with the weight of centuries of experience. In his long life, he had seen many species make first contact with the galactic community. All of them had shown appropriate caution when faced with superior technology and numbers. The humans seemed to be treating the encounter as an interesting puzzle to solve. What did their psychological profiles suggest? He asked. That is the most disturbing part, Veltar replied. According to our analysis, the humans are not mentally unstable or unusually aggressive. This appears to be normal behavior for their species. They have evolved to see challenges as opportunities rather than threats. The meeting room aboard the Zephrian ship, Harmony's Edge, had been prepared with extreme care. Environmental controls maintained perfect temperature, humidity, and atmospheric composition for both human and alien physiology. Medical teams stood ready on both sides in case something went wrong. After 3 days of negotiations, the first face-to-face meeting between humans and Galactic Civilization was about to begin. Captain Jake Morrison straightened his uniform one last time before stepping through the airlock. Beside him, Dr. Lisa Harper carried a medical scanner and tried to hide her excitement. Behind them, Chief Engineer Pete Russell looked around with the curious eyes of someone who had spent his life fixing things and wanted to understand how alien technology worked. The 3 humans walked into a room that looked like it belonged in a museum. Everything was perfectly clean, with soft lighting and furniture that seemed designed to prevent any possible injury. Waiting for them were 3 aliens that looked like they had stepped out of a dream. Commander Veltar was tall and thin, with blue skin that shimmered slightly in the light. His 4 eyes watched the humans with a mixture of curiosity and fear. Science Officer Visas stood beside him, her fingers already dancing nervously over a handheld device that was probably recording everything.
Our medical specialist Kethmer waited
near what looked like an emergency medical station, ready to help if anyone got hurt. "Welcome aboard our vessel," Veltar said through a translation device that made his voice sound mechanical. "We are honored to meet representatives of your species." Morrison stepped forward and extended his hand in the traditional human greeting. The aliens looked at his outstretched hand like it might explode. "It's called a handshake," Morrison explained. "It's how humans greet each other. We clasp hands briefly to show we mean no harm." Veltar very carefully reached out with one of his thin hands and touched Morrison's palm. The alien's skin was cool and smooth, and Morrison could feel him trembling slightly. It was clear that physical contact was not something these beings were comfortable with. "Your species practices ritual touching," Visas said, making notes on her device. "This suggests a high level of social trust." Dr. Harper smiled at the alien's reaction. "Actually, we do a lot more than that. Humans are very physical beings. We hug our friends, pat each other on the back when we do well, and sometimes we even engage in physical competition for fun." All 3 aliens took a step backward. "You engage in combat for entertainment?" Kethmer asked, his voice rising in pitch.
us.
"Not combat exactly," Pete Russell said with a grin. "Sports. We compete against each other in games that test our strength, speed, and skill. Football, wrestling, boxing is how we have fun and stay in shape." The aliens looked at each other with what humans would recognize as panic. Thesis was typing furiously on her device, probably sending emergency reports to the council. "Let me understand," Veltar said slowly. "Your species deliberately engages in activities that could result in injury, and you do this for pleasure?" "Oh, when you put it like that, it sounds worse than it is," Morrison said. "But yes, humans enjoy challenges. We like to test ourselves against difficult problems." "What kind of problems?" Visas asked, though she looked like she was afraid to hear the answer. Dr. Harper thought about how to explain human nature to beings who had never faced real danger. On Earth, humans climb mountains just to see the view from the top. We dive deep underwater to explore. We jump out of perfectly good aircraft with parachutes for fun. We race cars around tracks at high speeds. We sail boats across oceans during storms. The medical specialist Kethmer made a sound that the translation device couldn't interpret, but it sounded like someone choking. "Your species seeks out danger deliberately," he said when he recovered. "This explains your biological adaptations." Russell looked interested. "What do you mean?" "Your medical data shows capabilities that we thought were impossible. Rapid healing, high tolerance for toxins, ability to function under extreme stress. We assumed there had been translation errors." "No errors," Lisa said. "Humans evolved on a world that was constantly trying to kill us. We adapted or we died." The ones who survived passed on genes for toughness, intelligence, and the ability to solve problems quickly under pressure. Veltar was taking detailed notes. Your evolution was driven by constant threat. This is unprecedented in galactic records. What was your evolution like? Morrison asked. The three aliens looked at each other uncertainly. Finally, Thesis spoke. Our homeworld has stable weather, no dangerous predators, and abundant food sources. Our species evolved cooperation because working together was more efficient than working alone. Conflict was rare and usually resolved through discussion. No predators at all? Pete asked with amazement. The concept of one creature killing another for food is something we understand only theoretically, Kethmer explained. Our ecosystems are based on symbiosis and mutual benefit. Morrison was beginning to understand why the aliens were so afraid of humans. From their perspective, humanity was a species of killers who had somehow developed technology without losing their predatory instincts. Commander Veltar, he said carefully, I want you to know that humans are not the monsters you think we are. Yes, we evolved as predators, but we also evolved compassion, cooperation, and the ability to live peacefully with each other and other species. But you still have the capacity for violence, Veltar said. It was not a question. Morrison thought about how to answer honestly. Yes, we do. But having the capacity for violence and using it are different things. Most humans go their entire lives without seriously hurting another person. Most, but not all. No, Morrison admitted. Not all. Some humans do terrible things. But our society has laws and systems to prevent that. We've learned to channel our aggressive instincts into positive activities. Dr. Harper decided to try a different approach. Commander, may I ask about your medical capabilities? I've been studying your database, and I'm curious about how you handled trauma medicine. Kethmer looked puzzled. Trauma medicine? Medical treatment for serious injuries? Broken bones? Severe burns? Internal bleeding? That sort of thing? Injuries are extremely rare in our society. Most of our medical practice focuses on preventing age-related decline and treating diseases. Lisa pulled out her scanner and showed it to the aliens. This is a standard human medical device. Every ship, vehicle, and even many homes have one. We're trained to use them from childhood because injuries are common in human society, she demonstrated. The scanner on Pete Russell, who rolled up his sleeve to reveal an old scar on his forearm. This scar came from a metal cutting accident when Pete was learning to be an engineer, Lisa explained. The injury required 12 stitches and took 2 weeks to heal completely. The aliens stared at the scar like it was a museum exhibit. Continued working while injured? This is asked. Of course, Pete said. It was just a cut. Humans get hurt and keep going. That's normal for us. Russell showed them another scar on his hand from a childhood accident, and a third on his knee from playing sports in school. Each scar had a story, and each story horrified the aliens more. Your species treats major injuries as minor inconveniences, Kethmer said faintly. What you call major injuries, we call Tuesday. Pete replied with a laugh. The cultural gap was becoming clearer by the minute. Humans had evolved to shrug off problems that would hospitalize most galactic species. They had developed technology. By taking risks that other species would never consider, they explored dangerous places and did dangerous things because they found it interesting. Commander. Veltar was transmitting regular reports back to the Council, and each report made the situation seem more impossible. The humans were not lying about being peaceful, but they were also not hiding their capabilities. They were exactly what the galactic community feared most. Apex predators with advanced technology and the curiosity to use it.
Captain Morrison.
Veltar said finally, I must ask you a direct question. If my people were to threaten your ship, what would you do? Morrison considered the question carefully. The honest answer might start a war, but lying would be worse. We would try to talk first, he said. We'd look for a peaceful solution. But if you tried to hurt my crew, I would do whatever was necessary to protect them, including violence. Veltar nodded slowly. And if we tried to prevent you from leaving this system, we would leave anyway, even if we had superior numbers and firepower. Morrison smiled grimly. Commander, humans have been fighting against superior odds for our entire history. We've learned not to give up, even when the smart thing to do would be surrender. The alien commander transmitted his final report to the council with shaking hands. The humans were everything the protocols warned against: intelligent, technologically capable, and absolutely unwilling to be contained. But they were also something the protocols was never considered: genuinely peaceful beings, who were dangerous only when threatened. The question now was whether the galactic community was wise enough to tell the difference. Back on Earth, humanity's first interstellar mission was being monitored by deep space sensors. If the Intrepid failed to return, Earth would know that first contact had gone badly, and Earth would respond accordingly. 6 months had passed since the Intrepid's first contact with Galactic Civilization. The great trading station called Harmony Point now hosted humanity's first permanent embassy in space. Ambassador Helen Price walked through corridors filled with beings from dozens of worlds, all of whom stopped to stare at the legendary Deathworlder with mixtures of awe and nervousness. Helen was a woman in her 50s, with gray hair and kind eyes, but she carried herself with the quiet confidence that marked all humans. She had been a diplomat on Earth for 20 years before volunteering for the most important assignment in human history. Every day brought new challenges as she worked to build bridges between humanity and the galaxy. The human embassy occupied an entire section of the station, built with higher gravity and stronger materials than the rest of the structure. It had taken 3 months to construct, and the alien engineers had marveled at the specifications. Humans needed floors that could support 10 times the weight that other species required. They needed walls that could contain atmospheric pressure that would crush most aliens. They needed temperature controls that could handle ranges that other species considered lethal. But the embassy had become the most popular destination on Harmony Point. Every day, representatives from different species came to meet the Deathworlders and learn about their incredible civilization. Captain Jake Morrison had returned to Earth after the first contact mission, but he came back to Harmony Point regularly as part of the new human fleet presence. Today he stood in Ambassador Price's office, looking out at the bustling trade station through reinforced windows. "How are the integration talks going?" he asked. Helen sat down at her desk with a tired smile. "Better than expected, worse than hoped. The council is still debating whether to grant us full membership, but we're making progress." "What's the biggest obstacle?" "Fear, mostly. Not of what we might do, but of what our presence might change. The galaxy has been peaceful for 3,000 years. They're worried that adding humans to the mix might upset that balance." Morrison understood their concern. Human nature was different from anything the galaxy had encountered. Humans took risks that other species avoided. They explored dangerous places that others marked as forbidden. They solved problems through methods that others considered reckless, but they had also proven their value in ways the galaxy could not ignore. Dr. Lisa Harper worked in the embassy's medical wing, which had become a research center that was revolutionizing galactic medicine. Her team collaborated with alien doctors to develop new treatments that combined human trauma medicine with alien longevity research. Dr. Harper called medical assistant Robert Chen, looking up from his workstation. "The Thylorian delegation is here for their consultation." Lisa nodded and walked to the treatment room, where 3 alien doctors waited nervously. The Thylorians were facing a plague that had killed thousands of their people, and their own medical science could not find a cure. Dr. Velshon and Lisa greeted the lead Thylorian physician. "Have you brought the updated sample data?" The alien doctor, who looked like a tall, thin humanoid with golden skin, handed her a data pad. "Yes, Dr. Harper. But our analysis still shows no weakness in the pathogen. It adapts to every treatment we develop." Lisa studied the data with interest. The plague was indeed sophisticated, but she had dealt with similar problems on Earth. Humans had centuries of experience fighting diseases that evolved rapidly and resisted treatment. "Doctor, on Earth we call this an arms race. The disease evolves to beat our medicine, so we evolve our medicine to beat the disease. You've been trying to find a perfect cure that will work forever? That's not how nature works." She pulled up a human medical database on her screen. "Look at these treatment protocols. We don't try to cure diseases permanently. We try to stay one step ahead of them. We develop multiple treatments and rotate them so the disease can't adapt to any single approach. Dr. Velshin studied the human medical protocols with growing excitement. You deliberately use imperfect treatments? We use adaptive treatments. The goal isn't perfection, it's survival. Sometimes the best solution is the one that's good enough to work right now, even if it won't work forever. Within 2 weeks, the Thylorian plague was under control, using modified human medical techniques. It was the third major crisis that human problem-solving had resolved since first contact. Chief of Security Derek Palmer commanded the Human Defense Force at Harmony Point. He was a former military officer with 20 years of experience, but his real job had become something unexpected, teaching other species how to deal with problems they'd never encountered before. Lieutenant Williams, he called to his second-in-command. Lieutenant Karen Williams looked up from her tactical display. The pirates hit another convoy yesterday, sir. The Ventari Defense Fleet is requesting our assistance. Palmer studied the tactical reports with frustration. The Ventari were peaceful traders whose ships were designed for efficiency, not combat. The pirates were using stolen military hardware to attack trade routes, and the Ventari had no idea how to respond. Prep the Guardian for deployment, Palmer ordered, and send a message to the Ventari fleet commander. Tell them we're coming. To help, the Guardian was humanity's first warship designed for galactic service. It was smaller than most alien vessels, but built with human military philosophy. Tough, fast, and designed to win fights rather than avoid them. 3 days later, Palmer stood on the bridge of the Guardian as they approached the pirate fleet. The pirates had 5 ships, all heavily armed and positioned to attack the next Ventari convoy. Captain, called Navigation Officer Tony Martinez, the pirates are hailing us. They want to know who we are. Palmer smiled grimly. Tell them we're humans, and tell them to surrender now or face the consequences. The pirate response was immediate and predictable. They opened fire. The battle lasted exactly 12 minutes. Human warships were designed by a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare. The pirates had never faced anything like human military tactics. When it was over, 3 pirate ships were destroyed, and 2 had surrendered. The Ventari trade route was secure for the first time in months. Word of the battle spread quickly through galactic communication networks. The peaceful species of the Council had found their protectors. Elder Quintal stood before the Galactic Council for the historic vote. The Great Chamber was packed with representatives from 73 worlds, all waiting to decide humanity's fate. The debate had lasted for months, but the time for talk was over. Fellow beings, he began, his ancient voice carrying the weight of 500 years of wisdom. We face a choice that will shape our civilization for generations to come. Do we fear the Deathworlders and attempt to contain them, or do we embrace them as partners in building a stronger galaxy? The evidence was clear. In 6 months, humans had solved 3 major medical crises, ended a pirate threat that had plagued trade routes for years, and opened new regions of space for exploration that other species had considered too dangerous to enter, but they had also changed everything. The galaxy's careful balance of peace and safety was shifting. Other species were taking risks they had never considered before. Young aliens were asking questions about exploration and adventure that their elders found disturbing. The humans have proven themselves to be everything we feared and everything we hoped for, Quintal continued. They are dangerous, yes, but they are dangerous in service of principles we share, protecting the innocent, seeking knowledge, and building a better future. Ambassador Savan of the Kavari stood to speak. Elder, my people lost a colony to the last Deathworld species we encountered. How can we be certain history will not repeat itself? Quintal looked around the chamber at faces that showed fear, hope, curiosity, and determination. Because this time is different. The Ravagers sought to conquer. The humans seek to protect. The Ravagers took from us. The humans give to us. He activated a holographic display showing human activities across the galaxy. Medical teams working to cure diseases, engineering corps, building stations in hostile environments, defense forces protecting trade routes from pirates and natural disasters. They have made us stronger, not weaker. They've opened possibilities we never imagined. Yes, they are changing our galaxy, but they are changing it for the better. The vote was called. One by one, species representatives cast their decisions. The chamber fell silent as the results were tallied. 50-8 votes in favor of full human membership. 12 opposed. 3 abstained. Captain Morrison stood at the podium as the newest member of the Galactic Council. The human fleet had grown to 20 ships in 6 months, with plans for 50 more within the year. Earth's population was excited about the possibilities of galactic citizenship, and volunteers lined up for assignment to frontier worlds. Members of the Council, Morrison began, humanity accepts this responsibility with humility and determination. We understand that our nature makes us different, perhaps difficult at times. But we also understand that our differences can be our strength. He looked around the chamber at the alien faces watching him. Some still showed fear, but most showed hope and curiosity.